Big 550 KTRS, one of our favorites at the Post-Dispatch. David Hunn is here, and congratulations to you and your wife. Is this baby number one?
It is, baby number one.
Congrats.
8 weeks old today.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You've lost all the baby fat, and you look like you're fantastic.
Yeah, I've been working out.
All right, there you go. You wrote a story over the weekend, which is must-reading. It's at stltoday.com. It's still up there. Did it come out Friday or Saturday or Sunday?
You know, it's a Sunday story. They put them online Saturday afternoon.
Okay, gotcha. So it was in the Sunday paper.
Yep.
But it's online now. And what you did is you constructed the 4 hours between the time that Officer Wilson shot Michael Brown and the body was picked up.
Yeah, so 12:02, Officer Wilson, in the moments after 12:02, Officer Wilson shot Michael Brown. 4:37, his body was checked into the morgue. The outrage, really, frankly, across the community. I mean, it didn't matter on race. I assume it mattered a little on political persuasion, but people were so upset about that 4.5 hours. And so we said to ourselves, okay, first off, is this actually outrageous? And what happened? I mean, how do you go through 4.5 hours? Like, we don't know this stuff. We're not police officers.
Right.
What actually happens from the moment someone is killed?
Right.
Their bodies, stays on site. What happens in between?
Yeah. And one of the things you bring up that was you really need to go through this story line by line because it's a quick read. It's a great read, but it's so important and it's so moment by moment that you really need to sort of pay attention. One of the things you bring out that sort of shines a light on is the ambulance, which came at the right time. I mean, just came moments after the shooting.
So this is a crazy scenario and can only happen. I mean, this stuff, you like they say, you can't make it up. So Officer Wilson is at another call, literally a half mile away within the Canfield Greens housing area, an apartment complex. And he's with an ambulance. There's a 2-month-old who can't breathe well. And he gets the call. The ambulance gets the call. They go to that site. Officer Wilson leaves, and the incident happens. The ambulance then leaves, not knowing anything's going on, with a 2-month-old in the back.
Right.
Not critically injured, not dying.
Right. Right.
12:04, 12:05, 12:06. It's really hard to say exactly when. The ambulance folks thinks it was probably about 12:05.
And so does that ambulance then take Officer Wilson to the hospital?
Actually, that's a great point. No, we don't think any ambulance took Officer Wilson to the hospital.
Oh, okay.
And that point is still uncertain.
Okay, so we don't know,
Yeah.
but that ambulance comes by and checks on Michael Brown.
Yes.
They determine
You can see, there's a video, and you can see the ambulance, the paramedic, go into the crime scene, walk up to Michael Brown's body, grab his wrist, check for a pulse, grab his neck, check for a pulse, stand up, walk around the body looking carefully.
Right.
You can tell. I mean, this is a heavy moment.
Right.
And stops, kneels down, wipes his brow, stands back up, and calls his boss. And they determine right there that Michael Brown is deceased.
Okay.
So-
I'm sorry, Kelly. Once he dies, now this is riveting. Once he dies, what happens? The body is then transferred to a different department.
Yeah. So by law, when a paramedic, or when a doctor or paramedic, whoever declares someone dead, that body by law is in the care of the medical examiner for that community. And what that means is police can't touch the body. So that body stays there until the medical examiner says, as long as it's, a crime scene or something like that. I mean, not
Right.
everybody.
Sure.
Until the medical examiner says the body can be touched. So by law, really, police officers can't even touch the body. Now, that said, police officers control the crime scene. They control everything around the body. And the medical examiner can't really go in to the crime scene without the police having finished their work. So it's this very choreographed, very intricate dance that all these authorities have to do with communication, which is difficult, especially since, Ferguson responded,
Right.
but they weren't going to investigate. There's a little chaos. I think one could accurately say, hey,
Sure.
is this the right procedure? So the chief for Ferguson has to call the chief for St. Louis County. Everything takes time. They all have to brief their people. It's an hour before detectives are dispatched.
Let me ask you this. Now,
Yeah.
during this time,
Yeah.
people were gathering around. So it's been about an hour.
Yeah.
And it's beginning to already be.
It is tense.
Quite a big crowd.
By the first moment. I mean, it is, you can see, so yeah, there's been a lot of video shot by residents in the community. And you can see people start lining that police tape, and it does nothing but grow. Mm-hmm. And you can hear how angry they are. I mean, absolutely understandably. Like, it is, okay, personally, have you guys seen that video of the police officers, St. Louis police officers shooting the guy with the knife?
Yes.
A few days after.
Right.
It is a stunning moment just to watch on video in your home computer. You're like, I am watching a man die.
Right.
Now, imagine yourself actually watching it. I mean, it is an undescribable moment. I mean, I think anybody who says that people overreacted is not being empathetic to people who watched it.
David Hunn, hold that thought right there. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back more with you. David Hunn, St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter. I said it off the air. I'll say it on the air. You guys are doing a great job over there covering all this. It's really, really good. So you guys should be proud of yourselves.
Thank you.
And also, in terms of full disclosure, we've got a working agreement between the show and the newspaper, but that's not why I'm saying that. I'm saying it because you guys are doing a great job. Hold that thought. We'll come back more. David Hunn wrote a moment-by-moment story. It appeared in Sunday's newspaper. You can read it at stltoday.com about what transpired after and why it took 4 hours for the police to take the body away. More with David Hunn in a moment. David Hunn is with us talking about his story in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the Sunday edition, also at stltoday.com. It was a moment-by-moment accounting of what happened after Michael Brown was shot and killed by Officer Wilson. I want to get to a couple of things. You mentioned it took an hour for the detectives to get there because there was some type of odd shooting in South County, and they were following that. Then they got this call in North County.
Right. So 12:02 shooting happens. 12:05 the chief of Ferguson gets the call. A little bit later, chief of St. Louis County gets the call. He calls his detective, the chief of detectives.
Right.
They're already at a scene. They're at a scene in St. Anthony's. Hours earlier, that guy, I don't know if you guys remember this.
There was a gunman.
Yeah, gunman walks into St. Anthony's, grabs somebody, says, take me to your drugs.
Right.
They walk back into the hospital, and then they disappear. Mm-hmm. And so that's a scary scene because nobody knows where this guy is. He could be anywhere.
Right.
And so the police respond pretty heavily. SWAT goes down there, crime scene units, and all the detectives. Now, on a regular Saturday, like any business, the county doesn't man it doesn't have a full team, showing up for work, right? It's a Saturday.
Right. Yeah.
So they have people on call. They have a whole bunch of detectives on call. Well, they already made that call. They already called in all those guys. Those guys are already down at St. Anthony's. It takes time, not tons of time, but it takes time to grab them, bring them together, sit down, say, hey, okay, what do we have left to do here? What do we need to, who can we get out there and how fast? Mm-hmm. And then they start, dispatching out to Ferguson.
Because I think that lockdown at St. Anthony's, I was working in the newsroom that day, wasn't lifted until about 11:30-ish, I think.
I think noon.
Yeah, it was around that time.
And the detectives are still down there, and it takes 40 minutes to get from St. Anthony's to Ferguson.
Right. So there's a discrepancy between the police chief of Ferguson says he calls the police chief of the county, and the police chief of the county says, no, I didn't get the call then. There's a discrepancy between these two police chiefs.
The discrepancy falls under the word immediately. Chief Jackson said he called, so Chief Jackson of Ferguson said he called Chief Belmar of St. Louis County immediately. He got the call at 12:05 and he called immediately. Well, what does that mean? He's in the car driving to visit his kids. He turns the car around. He parks on the side of the road. He changes in his car into his uniform to go to Ferguson. Does immediately mean right after he made all the other calls he needed to make?
Right.
Does it mean at 12:05? Frankly, only Chief Belmar and Chief Jackson know the answer to that.
Also, so now the medical examiner is called, eventually, goes to the scene, and they hear gunshots. So it's not a secure scene. Take me through that.
So there's this really intense moment where, and actually it's the Calvin Whitaker he's a funeral home director who has a contract with the city and county to pick up dead bodies. I mean, it's a gruesome business, but
right.
he's really good at it. I mean, everybody knows him, and he's done it for a long time, and well respected. And he shows up at that scene, and It's like 2:30, so it's about 2.5 hours after it happened. And the cops stop him. They say, you don't have a vest on. You can't come in. He hears gunshots. This is probably the second round of gunshots that, as far as police can tell, I mean, whether or not it's true, they feel like they're being fired on. And the police say to Calvin and his wife, so he and his wife are a two-person team.
There's a whole other story there.
Yeah, right. And they say to the two of them, you don't have armored, vests.
Right.
Duck down, get in your car, duck down, and hang out. And they stayed there for an hour and a half. It was 4 o'clock when police finally said, we feel like the scene is safe enough for you to get out, pick up the body, and go.
Okay, so who's taking pictures? Now, we only know crime scenes from Law and Order.
Right.
So who's got
CSI.
the little triangles and the little this and the ones and the twos and the chalk outline? Who's doing all that?
So everybody does it a little differently, but in St. Louis County, there's a team of detectives called Crime Scene Unit. The Crime Scene Unit.
Right.
And those guys are detectives, and they come out, and they are always the ones who investigate the scene. Now, in this particular case, when they got there, again, same scenario. So I don't have any firsthand accounts from them. I wish I did.
Right.
But they waited an hour before they could start work. And once they started, they had to stop. So these are all judgment calls being made by the by the commander who is on scene, who is running the scene. And they're deciding it is too dangerous for you guys to keep working. So shots are being fired towards the area where the body was. So that's what police think it was, that they were shooting at them.
Right.
And at some point, the commander just said, no, you can't keep doing this.
Tom Jackson, the police chief of Ferguson, apologized, said there were mistakes made, and if he could do it again, he would.
Yeah, so one of the things, first off, this doesn't happen that often. So St. Louis County, according to medical examiner records, has only had 3 scenes where a police officer shot someone and they died, and the body stayed at the scene. They've only had 3 scenes before this since 2003.
So in 10 years, 11 years.
So, and every single one of those scenes, it was removed by about 9 a.m. So you don't have a situation where the body lays in the street at noon on a Saturday.
Right.
Those other scenes, all on weekdays. This is so rare.
Yeah.
The county doesn't, they're not going to like me saying this and forgive me in advance, but they don't have a lot of experience with this stuff.
Well, it goes to show you that it doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen very often.
And
Right.
every scene is different. When was his body actually covered, at least, though?
Yeah, so that's kind of brutal, too. So about 10 minutes in, they put a sheet over his body. But it was done in a way, the feet were still sticking out, the hand was still sticking out. It's
And at what point was his mother, Leslie McSpadden, when did she arrive on the scene?
She was there, nearly immediately.
Okay.
And she wasn't allowed to see the body.
So
she
for
says.
4 hours, she was there.
She was there. Yeah.
All while, the point is, all while tension keeps rising. It's hot. It's a Saturday afternoon, and the body's still there. 4 hours later, I can only imagine it begins to start to smell, and the blood on the street, and not to sound gory, but this is what they're all watching while the police are trying to do their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I think that's why Jackson says that they're, looking back on it, there are things I think he wishes they'd done differently. And one of them is, how quickly can we move, to kind of clean this crime, this crime scene up and move along.
But his argument is we only have one shot to do it right. And so we need as much information as possible so we can figure out what happened here.
So we called medical examiners. We pulled records from St. Louis City and St. Louis County, and we called medical examiners across the country. We probably talked to 8 counties from Washington State to Florida.
Right.
And every single one of them said the brutal truth, it's not nice. 4.5 hours is a long time for a body to stay on the street. But the brutal truth is sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes you need 9 hours. Sometimes you need 12. Sometimes it just takes a long time. So they don't know about this scene, right? They weren't there. They didn't see it. But this work has to be done right.
Extraordinary piece in the Post. STLtoday.com. David Hunn did the legwork on this. It was a great piece. David, congrats on the piece. Thanks for coming in.
Very quickly, shout out to Kim Bell, my co-author. Amazing reporter.
You got it. STLtoday.com. It's a must read. David Hunn and Kim Bell's story at STL.